Testing, testing.
Testing. How I did it is like very exaggerated.
Here to God damn it. Here to share the wild. Hold on.
I had to re-record so many times because I kept fucking it up.
Okay, well, can we do it?
Yeah, go for it. It's recording.
Oh, hey. This is That's Wild, the podcast. We're Lauren and Jen, two best friends of over a decade and your girlies behind the mic, here to share the wildest stories history has to offer.
Picture an adult bedtime story. Expect crazy twists, questionable humor, plenty of sass, and likely some choice expletives. We're diving into history with a bit of chaos and a whole lot of fun.
Was that better?
I liked that.
Better?
Yeah.
Okay, I love you. Bye.
Ooh.
Hello.
Hi. Hello. Testing, testing.
How's it going?
I'm good. Did you follow our Instagram page?
I did, yes. So exciting.
We're live on Instagram and TikTok. I close the door because who knows?
Oh, wait, we're on TikTok?
Yeah, we're on TikTok, but...
Wow, it's going to be an incredible 6 days.
I was going to say, should I plan to not be on TikTok because is it ending? What's going to happen?
I'm in mourning.
I saw you were posting about it and I felt sadness for you because as much as I love TikTok, I think you love it more.
It's just so informational. Like it's like a little encyclopedia.
Yeah.
At my fingertips.
If you tuned into our first episode, Jen was mentioning how she was going to go to Canada and watch TikTok. And I don't know if you saw it, but I found a TikTok that it was a woman
that explains TikTok.
Basically short-circuiting the system and was saying you can create a VPN through Canada to then... It was kind of what you were saying you were going to do as it were.
But here's the thing is that like there's not going to be like the creators on there, you know?
That's fair.
So
I mean, yeah. Should we have a funeral? Should we wear black and have a TikTok funeral?
I know. I was like, the next episode, I'm going to have a veil over my face, like the mourning black veils. The death of TikTok.
I'm in a mom group, and this girl was saying that some big named celeb, who I think is choosing to remain anonymous, maybe not, is trying to buy it. And I just thought, is it Elon? Is he buying something else and renaming it?
The Shark Tank guy said something about buying it.
Really?
Kevin O'Leary, I think his name is.
I can't tell you.
I don't know.
I've watched that show, but I can't tell you.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Okay. Well, what will you do? Catch up on just Instagram
We'll
Reels
all
and
be
sad?
Reels girls.
I said to my friends, I'm like, you haven't signed up, like now's your chance. And they're like, oh, fuck that shit. I'm like, guys, no, this is good. I was anti TikTok and now I'm for it.
I don't know why I still have this hope that it's not going to actually happen.
Well,
there's got to be something to replace it though, right? Like, remember Vine?
I mean, that was bought out and then just killed by, I think somebody bought it. I don't know.
I don't know what
maybe?
happened. You used to love Vine.
I did because I was all for short content. But I think
You've
I was
been
in
through
college.
this before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
R.I.P.
Well,
all those Vine stars, I think, just transferred over to YouTube, and that's where they're making their bucks.
And they're on TikTok, right?
Probably. Content creators can be universally loved and hated.
I know.
Wait. Do you have any updates on your life?
So no one knows this, but I work at a stable and I took kind of a little bit of a break over like Christmas and all of that, but I'm back at work.
Back at work, baby.
Yeah. So I was listening to audiobooks on my next topic at work.
So excited for that.
Yeah. With the horsies.
Yeah.
And I'm so excited. I'm
You're a horse
really
girl.
excited for the next topic.
I know. Me too. And
no, it's kind of sad, but it's also heartwarming at the same time.
Also, if you're listening and you're one of our devoted listeners, we love you. And we're literally asking everyone and anyone who knows about a historical event, who'd like for us to cover it or talk about it or research it, send it our way. So we will discuss it.
Yeah, submissions, please.
Please. My goal
I'm begging
is that
you.
people start listening and then they send us their crazy stories and then we just trust them to be truthful with us that this actually happened.
Oh, we should have like a segment.
Oh yeah, I'm
Listener
down for it.
stories.
I told you I wanted Tanner, my husband, to share about him getting lost in the Adirondacks because it's a wild story and
I will be mad at Tanner if he doesn't share that
he's
story.
trying to protect his group of fellow lossies. I don't know what the term is.
No,
because
fuck them,
it was like a
such a good story.
sacred. I know it was like a sacred experience for all of them, and he's trying to do right by them. And I'm like, no, we're talking about this.
We're just talking about it. He tells
Yeah.
everyone at parties anyways.
I know.
This
We'll
is
just get him liquored up.
More people. Our wine episode, he can come in and do
That's
one.
also to come, we hope, is that we'll be sharing some wild stories over a glass of vino.
I mean, I had 2 glasses already tonight, so.
Oh, hell yeah. I was doing dry January and I made it 6 days, so you should be proud of me.
6 days.
I went, and so technically I didn't start January 1st. I started January 5th, but made it until January 12th.
Well, this morning I texted James and I was like, I wish I did dry January. I really want to do it. And then I drank 2 glasses of wine tonight. So.
Hell yeah. Did you get into some Pinot Noir?
I didn't even look what it was. I went next door to my neighbors. So my neighbors are a really great, like, older couple, like older, like grandparents.
Well, what if they're listening to this? Beautiful and old. Yeah.
Incredibly old. I mean, incredibly amazing.
They're going to cry. Just kidding. Shout out names.
Well, I told them that I was podcasting tonight. And then I accidentally also told them the name. And then I told them, actually, I don't know if this is for you, so please don't listen. But if you didn't listen to me and Mr. Smith, you're out there, this is your warning. Stop now. Stop listening now.
Is that your neighbor's name?
Yeah.
Well, Smith is kind of obsolete or whatever.
Yeah,
so,
I know.
Not
That's
obsolete. It's kind of overused. So
yeah.
Well, like I was telling Jen before we started recording that I don't know if I want my dad to listen to this because he's anti-swear and we curse here.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
We curse in his house.
Mm-hmm. But either way, my neighbors get rowdy. They were just cracking open the second bottle and I came over here to do this podcast.
I love that.
So,
I want them to join in on this.
They're so fun. I told them, I was like, who knows, maybe you could tell a wild story.
It's actually great because our friends are coming out of the woodwork and are claiming that they have great wild stories to share. And now they're asking to be on the podcast. And I'm like, you don't understand.
Yay!
We are doing lots of research into the topics we talk about because we want to be historically accurate. And,
I know.
Entertain our viewers and listeners.
Think about how many things we're going to be like experts on.
I know.
Like every topic I've read so much about.
I feel like you dove head first into it. Well, yeah. Which, speaking of, good segue, my topic tonight is NXIVM, and if you're not familiar, you will be. And then just a heads up, I watched an HBO series called The Vow on this. There's 2 seasons, and then I listened to the audiobook, most of it. Don't Call It a Cult, and it's by Sarah Berman. And this will be in the show notes so that where all of our sources are cited, but there was so much information on it. I'm trying to do this story justice because there's also victims in it, which we have to, respect. So, yeah, NXIVM. It took place.
Which one is it?
It's how the pronunciation.
Yeah.
I've said it wrong 1 million times, but I've read it and heard it a million times. It's NXIVM.
NXIVM. Like the heartburn pill.
I think different spelling, which good different point. Spelling. I kind of forgot about that. Yeah.
NXIVM.
Spelled NXIVM, which I don't know what the fuck, how they got that from. And on top of that, it, NXIVM, all capitals, pronounced NXIVM. And I'll probably say it wrong because I've overread it so many times at this point. But I really hope to do the story justice. It literally happened in my backyard. If you remember, I live in the Saratoga Springs area, which is north of Albany. The majority of these stories took place in Albany. It's crazy. They were mentioning little suburbs of Albany. They were mentioning, if you're familiar, Clifton Park, 15 minutes from me. I was there today at a coffee shop. Literally, I was at Panera. And then they mentioned
a
Saratoga
quaint little
Springs.
coffee shop called Panera.
Called Panera. I was going to a meeting today, and my boss texted me 4 seconds before exiting. And yes, I looked at my phone. And then she was like, just kidding, we're going here instead. And I was just about to miss the exit. But that's why we love her, because last minute changes. But yeah,
I
Clifton
really
Park.
like how your story this week is something that happened 15 minutes from your house, and my story next week also happened 15 minutes from my house. So they're both very close to home. Yeah.
I forgot
These are
about
personal
that.
stories.
Yes.
I know. Really getting local with it.
It's also not really something I'm proud of that it happened in my backyard, because it's disgusting. Yeah. What kind of came about from this shitbag.
But national news.
Raniere. Yeah, national news. It was so weird, because every time I was watching something, it would mention the local newspapers, and I was like, oh, I've read that newspaper. I know what they're talking about. Mm-hmm. And then, yeah. So I'm going to try and do it justice. There's a lot of information that's not in this, and I recommend watching that series on HBO or on Max, whatever it is, and reading that book. Again, I'll put it in the show notes, just because there was just no way I could cover all of it. But yeah.
It's funny that you're doing this, because it's so close to home. I mean, hours away from where I live, but it's so local. I know someone who I know through someone else, someone that was in this cult.
Really? I mean, yeah. It was around for... No, I didn't know that. It was around for decades. Like, this was going on for decades, and I think it just basically escalated to be something that I don't even know if this was this man's sick-minded goal, what came of it, but he had such a true cult following that I think it evolved. But yeah, I'll get into it.
Okay. Let's hear it.
Okay, it's story time. In the early 2000s, self-help seminars were all the rage. People were flocking to workshops and retreats, eager to unlock their potential and achieve personal growth. Amidst this backdrop, a new organization emerged, promising to revolutionize the way people think and live. And it was called NXIVM, again spelled NXIVM. And at its helm was a quote-unquote charismatic leader and a morally bankrupt manipulator, the shitbag I mentioned, Keith Raniere. You'll be hearing lots about him.
Yuck.
And again, it's one of those names where I've been listening and hearing it so much that I'm afraid I'm going to say it wrong, but Keith Raniere. So what started as a seemingly legitimate self-improvement group soon spiraled into one of the most shocking and disturbing scandals in recent history. NXIVM presented itself as a community of like-minded individuals striving for excellence, but beneath the surface lay a dark and twisted reality. Allegations of manipulation, abuse, exploitation, all of the above, so gross, surfaced, leading to a dramatic downfall that captivated the world. So we're going to dive into the rise and fall of NXIVM and the sinister secrets it harbored, as well as the legacy it leaves behind. Okay, I'm going to set the scene a little for you. We're rewinding back to the late 1990s. Keith Raniere, a self-proclaimed genius with a background in multi-level marketing, i.e. pyramid schemes, co-founded NXIVM with Nancy Saltzman, a nurse and trained hypnotist. They marketed NXIVM as a personal development company offering executive success programs, or ESPs, designed to help individuals overcome limitations and achieve their goals. These courses, though expensive, attracted a loyal following, including celebrities like Smallville actress Allison Mack and Seagram heiress Claire Bronfman. And if you're familiar, Allison Mack's that like little blonde that was in Smallville. I mean, her face was blasted all over the news when this came out, because she was one of his main quote unquote slaves. And we'll get into that. But yeah, there was like master slave situations here, and that's a part of the reason it was like so fucked up. But
so you sign up for the classes, or do you sign up for like the whole shebang?
So a lot of people, how they kind of got onboarded was there was like a week-long seminar, and I think at the time when this was all unfolding as part of ESP was early 2000s, and it was like $3,000. So this wasn't a cheap onboarding, but they kind of targeted people with money because it helped fund all of their...
And then they would like travel to near Saratoga or
they would
the
literally
Albany
fly
area.
people into the Albany area. And then if they saw potential in somebody, they would front the money for them. Or if like, basically if you were attractive, I think that was kind of part of it. They would front the money for you and be like, I see you going in this. It was gross. Mass manipulation.
Just manipulating. Yeah. Okay, continue.
Raniere's journey to founding NXIVM began with Consumers Byline Inc., CBI. So this was essentially the pyramid scheme before ESP. There's a lot, so I'm going to try and keep you in line.
Mm-hmm.
So another multi-level marketing company that he launched in 1990. Consumers Byline, or CBI, promised members significant savings on everyday products in exchange for recruiting others to join. By the mid-1990s, the company faced mounting legal challenges, with multiple states investigating it for operating as an illegal pyramid scheme. And under this pressure, Raniere agreed to shut down CBI in 1996 and pay the fines. But he remained undeterred in his pursuit of influence and wealth and essentially manipulation. Determined to rebuild, Raniere partnered with Nancy Saltzman to create a new venture, Executive Success Programs. They claimed to combine Raniere's philosophical insights with Saltzman's expertise in behavioral modification and hypnosis. ESP courses drew in participants seeking personal growth, often through intensive workshops that promised to unlock their potential. By 1998, the pair rebranded their burgeoning enterprise as NXIVM, complete with a secretive and hierarchical structure that made it feel both exclusive and cutting edge. To understand NXIVM's appeal, imagine the atmosphere: upscale seminar rooms with sleek branding, eager participants dressed in business casual, and a sense of exclusivity. Attendees were encouraged to push their boundaries, embrace vulnerability, and believe in their limitless potential. This carefully curated environment fostered trust and devotion, laying the groundwork for deeper involvement. And again, if you're not familiar with this area, there is a lot of wealth here, and they would host these seminars not only in Albany, but the Lake George region, which is, if you've never heard of like the Adirondacks, it's gorgeous. Lake George is, I think I'm biased because I've been there and I'm close to it and I love it. Mm-hmm. It's like one of the most beautiful lakes in the country. And I think it has technically been considered the most clean lake at some point or another. So just picture a very picturesque location that really got people on board. Okay, so NXIVM operated from its Albany, New York headquarters, but quickly spread its influence across North America. Members signed non-disclosure agreements, sketchy, and followed strict rules, treating Raniere as a near messianic figure whose teachings were considered gospel.
I feel like the minute somebody comes to me with an NDA, I would be sus.
Red flag.
Right out of the gate. Yeah.
So sus. I've never signed one because I don't think I've ever been of prominence enough to be in an area where it's required.
Have you ever been like offered an NDA?
No, I'm not that cool.
Yeah. Like what are you involved in?
I mean, think about it. What's being talked about with NDAs now is like Diddy parties. Obviously fucked up.
Yeah.
And then
but I mean, like with celebrities, I understand why. I mean, in some cases I don't, but you know, I understand the concept of it. But I mean, going to like a personal growth retreat,
yeah,
and I'm signing an NDA.
I paid all this money. I'm going to a personal growth retreat, and I'm signing NDAs,
and I can't talk about it.
Honestly, though, since we've gone down this path before, girl, most likely to like.
I was going to ask you. I was like, do you think that you would be susceptible to cult stuff?
They really did. This is going to sound like I'm encouraging it. I am not. They did a great job of masquerading it as something that was to be desired, because there were. I mean,
hindsight's 2020.
Yeah, and there were a lot of people who weren't a part of like the bad, but I mean, at its core, it was awful. But yeah, of the two of us, I think it'd be me.
Part of me thinks like, okay, obviously that would never happen to me, but that one I also could kind of see. I don't know. What do you mean? I don't have anything to like back it up, but I don't know. I feel like when you market something as like just whimsical and like better yourself, I feel like that is set up to be something where personal development, like you're not pushing yourself hard enough. Oh, you're uncomfortable with this. Like maybe you're just not pushing yourself, or, you know, I feel like they can spin it more, especially if you're signing up for something like that. You already maybe are kind of like unhappy with where you're at and looking for change either way, you know?
And it's sad because they would have like group sessions essentially where Nancy Saltzman, who has all of this credential and is reputable, or you think, where these people were having these emotional breakthroughs and they'd be sobbing because she was able to get to the root of like their problems. There was literally people in the docuseries who would talk about overcoming like their tics or what's it called? They would have Tourette's, and she would literally help them get to the root of why they would have these tics, and they would like overcome it. So it's really sad because it could have been used in a beautiful way, but it was just such an abuse of power. In 2009, Raniere arranged for a public relations coup, an event that would bolster his credibility. Through Claire Bronfman's wealth and connections, and again, she was the Seagram heiress, Raniere managed to secure an audience with the Dalai Lama, a figure respected worldwide for his spiritual leadership. Raniere and several high-ranking NXIVM members traveled to Albany for the occasion. While the Dalai Lama initially canceled the visit amidst growing concerns about NXIVM's practices, he eventually attended after assurances were made. During the event, the Dalai Lama presented Raniere with a ceremonial white scarf and spoke on the importance of ethics and leadership. While the moment was short-lived, it gave NXIVM a veneer of legitimacy that Raniere used to attract new followers. Which, like, damn.
Wow.
Beyond its facade of self-improvement, NXIVM's recruitment methods relied heavily on exploiting human vulnerabilities. Raniere targeted individuals seeking purpose, often promising them an elite path to self-discovery. He emphasized exclusivity and community, convincing recruits they were part of something groundbreaking. His teachings, a blend of pseudo-philosophy and recycled self-help jargon, were packaged as transformative insights, reinforcing his role as a visionary leader. To solidify members' loyalty, NXIVM employed a tactic known as collateral. Collateral referred to deeply personal or potentially damaging material, explicit photos, confessions of past misdeeds, or financial information that members were required to submit as a sign of trust. For example, a member might be asked to write letters falsely accusing family members of abuse or to disclose sensitive secrets under the guise of personal growth, which I'm like, how could that be a guise of personal growth? But again, these people, I don't want to blame the victims. This is horrible. This collateral was then held as leverage to ensure compliance and silence, creating a cycle of dependency and fear. Some women reported being coerced into submitting nude photos or signing over financial assets, ensuring their absolute obedience. These practices blurred the lines between personal growth and coercion, effectively binding members to NXIVM's cause. It's so sad. Some women like tried to still remain anonymous because they were just like their lives were ruined, and it was just a vicious cycle of. What do you mean?
Did he release any of the collateral? Like,
not that I know of.
Or just terrified either way.
Oh yeah, because it was always like a threat lingering over their head, and like again, this man was a troll. I don't know how. I'm not saying if he was like beautifully goddess-like, godlike, or whichever, but he was a troll.
But I feel like charisma goes like really far, you know?
Yeah. And
in
just
convincing people.
And he was just narcissistic to the core. Like yeah. I know I've used the term mass manipulator, but that's what he was.
Yeah.
So there's so many people involved in this, but a lot of the times it's referred to as like his inner circle. So I'm covering most of the people that are in this inner circle and a lot of the women who essentially spoke out against him, which was great, but we're going to dive into that a little more.
Okay.
As NXIVM grew, so did Keith Raniere's power. Behind the scenes, a much darker reality unfolded. Raniere surrounded himself with a select inner circle that became both his enforcers and his victims. Okay, so the dark part of the inner circle, it's called DOS, and this is a core group of women. And it was marketed as an elite women's group focused on empowerment, which is wildly ironic.
What does DOS stand for?
So DOS stands for Dominus Obsequious Sororium.
Is it Latin? It's obsequious. That sounds like a word that I should know what it means, but I don't know what it means.
Okay. So I believe it means, and get too excited because it's pretty gross, master over slave woman is what that translates to roughly. So it was marketed as woman's empowerment, excuse me, but the translation was master over slave woman. Picture that.
Wow. Thinly veiled.
Yeah. Raniere promoted it as a sisterhood designed to help women achieve greatness and personal growth. But in reality, it was a brutal system of control and abuse where women were manipulated into servitude. Okay, Sarah Edmondson. She joined NXIVM in 2005, eager to find self-improvement through the group's executive success programs, and she quickly rose to a high position within the organization and trusted Raniere. When her mentor, Lauren Saltzman, the daughter of Nancy Saltzman, invited her to join DOS, Sarah thought it would push her limits in a positive way. To gain entry, Sarah was asked to provide these personal collateral or private secrets, nude photos, and damaging information that would ensure her compliance. And she was one of the initial whistleblowers. So
is that the brown-haired girl? That
one of them.
Yeah.
She was, if you watch The Vow, she's like the main interwoven storyline. Yeah. She was quoted as saying, quote, "I thought it was going to be a sisterhood. I thought it was going to be something that would make me feel more empowered." And she reflected on that. But there was all these things done to ensure her compliance.
Yeah.
And it's sad because you can tell she's a smart woman and she was still taken advantage of. So, Sarah, however, once inside DOS, she learned the truth. Women were assigned masters who controlled every aspect of their lives. They were required to report their daily activities, follow strict calorie restrictions, and perform tasks on demand. But it was the branding ritual that shocked her the most. Women were told it would symbolize their commitment, but it was in fact Raniere's initials that were permanently branded on their bodies. Quote, "We were told to feel the pain as part of our growth." And then the trauma of this experience would haunt many of the survivors.
So they were literally branded.
They were literally branded, and it was under the guise that, like, oh, sisterhood, we're all going to get tattoos. But in Sarah's case, like, she kind of goes into detail in The Vow of just, they brought her into a room, they asked her to strip naked, she was blindfolded, and there was like other girls there. So, I mean, I don't know if we can talk about this, but our sorority, I mean, we didn't have to get naked, but there was hazing rituals. So I think it was the understanding that that's kind of what was going to take place, the idea of sisterhood. And then, and there's so many horrible stories of women who went through this experience. Like, I think there was one woman who was held down when she was branded, and just, it literally seared their skin. And it's located on their very lower hip, to give you a visual.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next girl we're going to talk about, her name's India Oxenberg. She was a young woman drawn into NXIVM in her early 20s, and she also became ensnared in the control of DOS, or DOS. India was manipulated by her quote-unquote master, Allison Mack, the television star from Smallville. Allison was one of the leading figures in recruiting women into DOS, convinced India that joining the group would provide clarity and confidence. India later admitted, "I was really just trying to control my entire life, my entire existence, in a way that was completely unhealthy. I had no idea what was really happening to me." So she's also on the docuseries, and you can tell she has serious remorse, but she was very convinced that this was like a way of life.
So what is the benefit for like the second tier people? Like the Smallville girl and the Seagram's girl.
I think it was literally just a sense
power,
control, but also these women were so enraptured by Keith Raniere and his philosophy. They looked at him like he was a god. So the idea that they were masters over these slaves was,
so they were like the top dogs for him.
But it almost wasn't like how the story is told. It almost seems like they truly were doing it to, not for themselves, but really for him. It's so wild. So India, she's like this beautiful girl who I think she just entered young, and you could just tell. And she had initially joined with her mom, and her mom, a lot of the storyline is her mom like trying to break her out of this because she was like, this is a cult. So India was subjected to extreme physical control, including a 500 calorie a day diet in an effort to meet Raniere's ideal of thinness. As her life
That's like
became
starvation.
500 calories. Are you kidding? That's like
more than starvation.
That's breakfast 1 for me. That's not even breakfast 1 and 2.
Yeah.
It's gross. As her life became more isolated and her self-esteem eroded, India realized the depth of her manipulation. She recalls how Allison Mack pushed her to believe that everything happening in NXIVM was for her personal growth, despite the increasing isolation and psychological damage. Okay, so Allison Mack, she used her celebrity status to recruit these women, and she was one of Raniere's most trusted followers. And you watch, there's a lot of video footage of her with him and their interactions, and you can just see she's just loyal to a fault. She's just devoted.
So what year are we talking here? Like what timeline?
In the mid, I think 2000s.
Okay.
Like prior to 2009, after 2000.
Okay.
It spans like that whole decade. So yeah, Allison used her celebrity to recruit these women. She became completely complicit in perpetuating the abuse of DOS. And later, Mack admitted her role in promoting the branding and enforcing the master-slave hierarchy. So she's guilty. I mean, and we'll talk about her punishment. She encouraged women to see the branding as a badge of honor and believed she was helping them grow, just as Raniere had told her. Her own sense of powerlessness under Raniere's control was evident when she later confessed, "I was so brainwashed into thinking it was all part of my own empowerment." But I think she's complicit. Like I don't really feel too sorry for her.
Yeah.
So another one of these women, Lauren Saltzman, which again is the co-founder's daughter. She was another key figure in the inner circle. She joined NXIVM in 1999, and she was young. She was in her 20s, believing that Raniere was a spiritual leader capable of transforming her life. She rose to prominence within the organization, eventually becoming one of its most powerful members. Lauren later admitted that she was deeply under Raniere's influence. She said, "He convinced me that my sacrifices, even recruiting women for DOS, were necessary for my own growth." Lauren's testimony, because yes, this goes to court, revealed the extreme measures she took to enforce Raniere's rules, including locking a woman in a room for nearly 2 years as punishment.
Wow.
But she did later become one of the key figures in exposing his crimes.
Locking someone away for that, like, kidnapping.
2 years.
Yeah, like where are their families?
Yeah. This is
like trying to find them. You know what that reminds me of?
What?
R. Kelly. Did you watch the R. Kelly documentary?
Not yet. He's gross.
Well, it's been out for years. But
so yeah.
There was like he used to do stuff like that too, like lock people away and their families couldn't contact them.
Well, if it's any indicator of this, they're very similar because they abuse their power over women and they also went after very, very young women. Which is horrifying. Okay, so we're going to kind of get into the downfall a little bit here. Okay, so more of his victims were 2 sisters, Camilla and Daniela. Daniela was actually the one that was in prison for 2 years. And Camilla was just 15 years old when this abuse started. He continued to use tactics like isolation, shaming, and psychological manipulation to maintain control over these women and others. His ability to project a calm intellectual demeanor masked his predatory behavior. Another one of the women who was in his inner circle was Toni Natali, one of Raniere's earliest partners, who later spoke out about his manipulative tactics. There's also Karen Unterreiner, who was a longtime associate, and she helped manage NXIVM's finances and aware of Raniere's relationships, but remained loyal. And these women, again, there's a lot of hearsay about if they were complicit or not. And Toni Natali, one of his first partners, definitely saw the signs and then was like, "I'm out."
So it was just him and a bunch of women. Were there any men?
That's the thing is there were a bunch of men and so Sarah Edmondson, the one who's like one of the main whistleblowers, she was married to a high-ranking male member of NXIVM, and she never had like a sexual relationship with Raniere, but the idea was still that she was like a slave to Lauren Saltzman. It's so weird, the hierarchy of it, because it's like these men almost turned a blind eye, but then when stuff really started coming out, they would, if they were part of NXIVM, they would protect their wives. And in the Vow, it
Was
gets
this
into that with more
sexual? Like, was this like with Keith Raniere or whatever?
most of his victims had sexual relationships with him. Not all. Some of it just came down to power.
Okay. Yeah.
And yeah, and again, when stuff started coming out, there was people who were involved in NXIVM for decades who were like, I'm bowing out, because they saw the truth of what was going on, what was happening.
Yeah.
He would also, a lot of women were targeted for their backgrounds. There was women who would do very well in like the finance sector who he'd bring on as kind of like financial advisors. And then especially if they were successful businesswomen, he would bring them on, manipulate them to think that like they were doing right by the world. And then he would essentially be paying them a salary to be working. And then the longer they became invested, that's when they started to kind of like turn a blind eyes to some of the odd stuff happening behind the curtain.
Yeah.
So Claire Bronfman, she was the Seagram heiress, and she provided significant financial backing, funding lawsuits against critics and shielding Raniere from legal consequences. Kathy Russell was the group's bookkeeper, and she handled administrative tasks and was part of Raniere's very loyal network. They each played a unique role in sustaining NXIVM's operations while also becoming victims of this toxic environment. There's also a lot of conspiracies tied to this like decades-long cult, and I'm going to kind of just touch upon that. And again, these women are victims, so I'm trying to respect that. So tragically, some of the women that were involved with Raniere met untimely ends. There's a woman named Kristen Snyder, and she was a devoted member. She disappeared in 2003 after attending a NXIVM seminar in Alaska. Her death was ruled a suicide, but many believe her involvement with NXIVM played a role in her mental distress. And there was also rumors that she was carrying his baby, which is just...
Whoa. Wait, so she killed herself?
That's what...
or do they not know what happened to her?
Well, it was a disappearance, but I think one thing I read was stating that she was in Alaska and she got into a canoe and kind of just paddled out, and then they never found her, which God. Like very sus.
Yeah.
And again, I don't want to harp on anyone's mental awareness of what was going on. So if that was her choosing to, die by suicide.
This is sick stuff.
Yeah. Her death was ruled a suicide, but I don't think they ever found her. And then there was Gina Hutchinson. She was another follower. She took her own life in 2002 after years of manipulation by Raniere. And he had begun a relationship with her when she was just a teenager. So.
Ugh. How old is he in this time period? Okay,
so right now, Keith Raniere is 64 years old.
Yeah. So what is
this?
My
mom's age, I think. Most of the intensity of all this happened in like the 2000 to 2009. And then like it went to court, I think around like 2018 as things were. So, I mean, he was 2000 to 2009, he was in his 40s, right?
Okay. Yeah, I think so. I don't know. Math.
We're going to just talk about some of the theories and how he kind of positioned himself to be this gross person. To understand NXIVM's transformation, it's important that we discuss the psychological and structural mechanisms Keith Raniere employed to control and exploit his followers. And so some of this is a little redundant, but it was just such a big factor of it. Mm-hmm. At the core of NXIVM was Raniere's ability to create a facade of intellectual superiority and moral purpose. He crafted an intricate web of pseudo-intellectual philosophies, blending elements of pop psychology, self-help jargon, and spiritual mysticism. These teachings appealed to ambitious, idealistic individuals seeking personal growth, particularly those disillusioned by traditional paths to success. So essentially people who wanted to grow in their careers, in their personal life. What him and Nancy were creating was a success path. It was helping people overcome their fears to build success in their lives.
Yeah. And who doesn't want that?
Anyone off the street would want to do that. They'd want to find success. And they sold it so well.
Who wouldn't be enticed?
Right? He positioned himself as an infallible leader, claiming to possess unparalleled insight into human potential. For followers, questioning his authority wasn't just discouraged. It was framed as a personal failing or a sign of internal resistance to growth. So if you questioned him, he would put that on you and say, that is your own like neuroses working against you. So it's gross. Psychological coercion was a hallmark of Raniere's manipulation. Through tactics like gaslighting, he distorted reality for his followers, making them doubt their perceptions and decisions. Love bombing, this term was used a lot with him, is overwhelming new recruits with praise and affirmation. It created a sense of belonging and dependence. This was especially effective in recruiting women to DOS, where initial enthusiasm for empowerment masked their sinister reality of exploitation. By the time followers realized the full extent of Raniere's control, they were often too entrenched, financially, emotionally, and psychologically, to leave. And they, I was watching something where they were talking about the retreats, and they would literally just have people stay up for hours blasting music. There would always be dancing because they were essentially trying to recreate the high of like being on drugs, because people become dependent on that.
Yeah.
So that's how, and it was in Lake George. So NXIVM's structure mimicked multi-level marketing schemes, reinforcing a culture of hierarchy and competition. Members were always incentivized to recruit others, and this fostered an environment where loyalty and performance were measured by their ability to expand the group. The steep financial cost of NXIVM courses deepened members' commitment. Having invested significant money, many rationalized the experience as worthwhile to avoid confronting the possibility of being conned, a psychological phenomenon known as the sunk cost fallacy. DOS, the secretive women's group within NXIVM, took these dynamics to a harrowing extreme. Again, we talked about collateral. There was compromising photos, personal secrets, and like the financial aspect of it. It really weighed on these women, and it was presented as a tool for accountability, and it functioned as a weapon for control. There was a constant threat of exposure, and this made sure that members were compliant and isolated. So they were like too afraid to reach out for help because of these things. Another key factor was isolation. NXIVM discouraged members from maintaining relationships with outsiders, framing such ties as detrimental to personal growth. And earlier I was talking about India Oxenberg. They immediately targeted her because she was young, beautiful, and she was hopeful. And they, remember how I said she signed on with her mom? That was good initially, but they saw her.
Did they like separate her from her mom?
Yes.
So that she was more vulnerable?
Yes. So immediately they recruited both of them. And then I think there was like group efforts, or they set up groups and they put mom in group 1, her in group 2. So it was immediate.
So predatory.
From the beginning.
Yeah.
And she was in this organization for over a decade.
And just like calculated, you know, like not even just a shitty person, but like a very calculated organization to it, you know,
right?
Like they thought of everything.
Can you imagine being behind the scenes and saying to somebody like, we want this girl and we need to remove her mom from the picture so that we can target her essentially?
Yeah.
So this strategy severed members from external perspectives and support systems, leaving NXIVM as their sole source of validation and community. The secrecy extended to strict, again, non-disclosure agreements, insulating the group from public scrutiny and deterring whistleblowers. Joke's on you guys, because there were some. So experts also, I know, they also point to the seductive nature of empowerment movements. Many of NXIVM's recruits, again, were women that were drawn to the promise of breaking barriers and achieving self-actualization. He framed his teachings as revolutionary, and he tapped into genuine desires for self-improvement, which he then exploited for personal gain. This manipulation highlights the blurred lines between legitimate personal development programs and exploitative high-control groups. And Sarah Edmondson, who, again, we see in the docuseries, once somebody said to her, you're in a high-control group, that's, I think when it was initially triggered to her, that is synonymous with cult. And that's when I think the walls started coming down.
That was like that was the phrase that really stuck with her. A high control group?
A high control group, yeah.
So is that like a phrase used to discover cults?
And I think it's also, I think it also helps to outline like the hierarchical or hierarchy of a certain organization. Like there's hierarchy and then there's essentially setting up like cult-like practices,
Yeah.
such as isolation, etc. These theories underscore the complexity of Raniere's manipulation, but they also serve as a warning. NXIVM's story reveals how ambition, vulnerability, and misplaced trust can create the perfect storm for exploitation, and it raises more questions. How can society better identify and regulate high control groups? What safeguards are needed to protect individuals seeking self-improvement, and how do we hold charismatic leaders accountable without stifling legitimate exploration of personal growth? So I think more professions, like literally more jobs popped up after this because more people were trying to stop the start of cults.
What do you mean? More professions?
More people were, I don't know if it was like the Better Business Bureau, but there was more practice in stopping cults from even forming because they would look for high control groups and things of that nature.
I feel like this should be a psych major class.
That's funny because it stands as, they talk about how NXIVM is like a case study and its devastating potential of like unchecked power and psychological manipulation.
Yeah.
And
I feel like it's something where everyone says, oh my God, I could never be involved in that. But it happens to smart. I mean, not even just, like young, beautiful, impressionable people. I feel like it happens to so many different people, who just came, who came out with a book about being in a cult.
Who?
The One Tree Hill girl.
Oh, Joyce.
Yes. Yeah.
She played
Bethany.
Haley.
Yep. Yeah. She was in a cult too.
Yes. She did talk about that. I'm curious about that.
I know. I want to read the book, but I haven't gotten to it yet, but
I like her. I like Haley.
I know,
I'm an
me
OTH
too.
OG fan.
I know. Same.
You are?
One Tree Hill?
Yeah. I don't know if I knew this.
I'm obsessed. I've seen the whole thing like multiple times.
I restarted watching it recently.
Chad McMurray is from, I think, Buffalo, but I think it was specifically Clarence.
I saw a clip of him at this Sunday's Bills game, and I got very excited.
Really?
Yeah. There was like a camera behind him, and it was him. I was
wow.
It's one of those shows where I have to limit how much I watch because it would fuck with my emotions. Like, I'm very empathetic, so I would watch it, and if like, I just remember when, spoiler, Brooke and Peyton get like kidnapped by Psycho Derek.
Oh, I remember that. That was so crazy.
It fucked with my head. It toyed with my emotions, so I was like, I need to take like a few days break from binge watching this show.
Do you remember, if you were really devoted, do you remember when she was Bethany Joy Lenz, and then for a time her credits, like her name in the credits changed, and it was like Bethany Joy, I want to say like Galoti or something
was that
like
when she was in the cult?
Sounding. Yes, she like married, I'm not 100% sure on that, but I think married into the cult or started dating this guy, and then he was involved in the cult, and then she got brought in that way. But who will really like this episode is our friend Haley, because I feel like
shout out Haley,
she loves cult stuff.
Oh my God.
And learning about them. But it's just going to happen. It happens to so many different people. And you see like all of these young actresses get sucked into it.
Like, if we want to talk about other cults, is Scientology a cult? I don't know.
I mean, it sounds like it. A lot of hierarchical, high control. What is it called? High control
groups.
High
Tom
control
Cruise
group.
is fucking spearheading that.
I mean, yeah, that's wild.
But yeah, One Tree Hill, I could talk about that all day. And
I
guess I'm not a true fan though, because I don't remember her name changing in the credits.
Yeah, it went back to normal too after a while. To her first.
Well, good, she got out.
Yeah.
So NXIVM,
the rise after that tangent.
No, it's okay. Its rise and fall exposes the systemic vulnerabilities that allow cult-like organizations to thrive, offering lessons that extend far beyond its own dark legacy. And speaking of legacy, we're going to talk about this a little. So NXIVM's legacy is a chilling testament to how unchecked power, secrecy, and manipulation can foster an environment ripe for abuse. It stands as a cautionary tale, but also as a rallying cry for greater oversight in the self-help and personal development industries. For many, the NXIVM scandal shattered the illusion that self-improvement organizations are inherently safe or altruistic. It revealed how such groups can prey on people's vulnerabilities, ambition, insecurity, or the desire for community, and exploit them under the guise of empowerment. The case has prompted both scholars and psychologists to study the mechanisms of coercion and control, drawing parallels between NXIVM and other cult-like organizations. And perhaps most importantly, NXIVM's downfall highlights the critical role of survivor voices in seeking justice. Women like Sarah Edmondson, India Oxenberg, and Toni Natali publicly shared their harrowing experiences despite facing threats, legal intimidation, and societal stigma. Their courage not only exposed the truth, but also helped dismantle the pervasive culture of silence surrounding abuse in high control groups. And some of these women who did speak out, they would literally be getting served legal document after legal document of Raniere essentially attacking them, their character, and he would use his authority and his money to just like bury them with legal documentation if they did speak out.
Are these people signed NDAs themselves? Like, how enforceable is an NDA? I mean,
I think
probably
after
pretty.
a certain amount of time they expire, right? I thought it was like 7 years, but that's I would have to double check that, because like in my eyes, like legal document binding, but maybe or you have to pay like a fee. But
Yeah, I don't really know how that
were
works.
like, I don't care, I need to speak out on the matter.
Yeah.
And legally, NXIVM's case set a significant precedent. The eventual conviction, he was convicted of Keith Raniere on charges of sex trafficking and racketeering, has led to increased scrutiny of organizations that operate in secrecy or use coercive tactics. Claire Bronfman also was sentenced. And again, she was just complicit in what he was doing.
That's the Seagram's girl.
Yes. And it just kind of reinforced the message that wealth and status wouldn't shield these perpetrators from accountability. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of ripple effects from NXIVM's exposure. And just tying back to like the cult-like aspect of it, it called for stronger regulation of very similar groups. Experts have urged governments to reevaluate how such organizations are classified and monitored, particularly those using aggressive recruitment tactics or requiring members to provide collateral. Some states have introduced or strengthened legislation targeting coercive control and psychological abuse. On a cultural level,
just sounds so hard to enforce. Like, right? Legally, it's so hard to kind of judge out who is what's a cult and what's, willingly happening.
And like, how do you quantify psychological abuse? Because it's like, abuse is abuse, but how do you quantify it? And yeah. I know you can sue for, like, what's one of the things you can sue? Like, I know there's like defamation and there's like, there's all those levels, but yeah, how do you quantify it? On a cultural level, NXIVM's story captured public fascination. And again, I watched the Vow docuseries and I also listened to the book, but there's other things. There's a show on Starz called Seduced, and it provided an intimate look at the experience of former members. And then, Sarah Berman's Don't Call It a Cult. It was more of like an investigative deep dive. Highly recommend. They have not only kept the conversation alive, but they have also served as educational tools, helping people recognize the warning signs of coercive and exploitative groups. Beyond legal and cultural impacts, the legacy of NXIVM is also deeply personal for its survivors. For many, the process of healing is ongoing, requiring years of therapy, rebuilding trust, and reconnecting with loved ones. Some survivors have become advocates for others who have experienced abuse, using their platforms to raise awareness and promote resources for recovery. NXIVM's story underscores the need for critical thinking and skepticism, particularly in an age where people are increasingly turning to alternative methods for personal growth. While seeking guidance and self-improvement is a natural human desire, NXIVM reminds us of the importance of asking tough questions, seeking transparency, and recognizing when something just doesn't feel right. Its legacy warns us about the dangers of unchecked power and blind loyalty, but also shines a light on the strength and resilience of those who refuse to remain silent in the face of injustice. So I'm going to talk a little bit about People Are Now and just a little bit of how this unfolded.
Yeah.
So the NXIVM saga, it was a sobering reminder of how easily charisma and the promise of personal growth was weaponized to manipulate power. Keith Raniere's ability to cloak his abuses under the guise of self-improvement highlights the dangers of blind trust in so-called quote-unquote gurus and organizations that demand secrecy and absolute loyalty. But it's also a story of resilience and justice for its victims. Women like Sarah Edmondson and India Oxenberg did risk everything to expose NXIVM's darkest secrets. Their bravery not only dismantled the organization, but empowered countless others to come forward with their own stories of abuse. And these survivors remind us of the importance of speaking truth to power, even when the odds feel insurmountable. After the fall of NXIVM, many of the women involved had to reckon with their past, some stepping forward to speak out and others facing legal consequences. So where are they now? Sarah Edmondson, after escaping NXIVM, she became one of the most vocal whistleblowers, sharing her experience and helping to expose really all of NXIVM's criminal activities, because in the lawsuit, there's just so many things listed that I remember the lawyers had to try and nail down like what they had evidence on so that they could essentially get Keith Raniere on these charges. She did write her own memoir, and it's called Scarred, The True Story of How I Escaped NXIVM, the Cult That Bound My Life. And she's an advocate of survivors of coercive control, and she speaks out to raise awareness about the dangers of these organizations. So I think because she realized the error of her ways, and she was a slave. I don't know if I think she technically did become a master, but it sounds like she didn't abuse her power. She didn't, there weren't any charges brought against her, I don't believe.
Yeah.
India Oxenberg, she became an advocate for others involved in similar organizations after escaping NXIVM. She participated in the Stars documentary Seduced Inside the NXIVM Cult, and also The Vow, the docuseries, and it chronicles her journey. She's working to reclaim her life and heal from the trauma, and she continues to support mental health awareness and survivors of abusive systems. Lauren Saltzman, one of NXIVM's top-ranking members, she pled guilty to charges related to her role in the organization. She was sentenced to time served after spending several years under house arrest. And
That's the daughter.
That's the daughter.
Okay, yeah.
She has expressed regret for her actions, though she remains a controversial figure among survivors because she was complicit, yes, but she was also quote like a master. She had slaves under her, and she was one of those people who she was just enamored by Raniere. She didn't appear in the docuseries I watched. I don't know if there's any video you see of her is like of the past that people had taken video of. And she seems like a very happy girl. And it's sad because I'll get to Nancy Saltzman, but this is her mom, and she didn't realize she was under like the thumb of Keith Raniere. She claims she did not know of their sexual relationship.
Oh my God.
In the docuseries, she kind of cries about it because she was like, he broke her, he stole her youth, he promised to have kids with her, and he kind of like held it over her head as an additional form of manipulation.
They called each other like master and slave.
Yes. And another name that I didn't even bring up was one of his nicknames was called Vanguard. He was like the god, the overseer. He was Vanguard. And another thing that they would do is it was called V Week, and they would host these week-long celebrations in honor of his birthday where, again, everyone would go to Lake George, and it was just that high energy level that people craved. Mm-hmm. But it was like during his birthday. And so who knows what really like went on behind the scenes there, and how he would abuse his power for that.
What a slime ball.
Which, like, don't get me wrong, I love a good birthday celebration, but like, fuck you, dude.
Yeah, just like making yourself a nickname like that.
Yeah.
Vanguard. That's weird.
That's where I do my retirement. I didn't know it was anything else. I will say that Vanguard, like from day one, that's how anybody who joined NXIVM was supposed to address him. And there would be paintings of him, and they would have to address it and honor it as Vanguard, which seems pretty culty to me.
Yeah, I feel it's giving cult right from the beginning.
I know.
You know?
Yeah. DOS, that meaning like master over slave woman. And there's a lot, it's wild because DOS, they say that it was run by the women. And Keith, you'll hear like a telephone call of him saying, oh, I did not orchestrate this. I'm not in charge of it, but like he was. So Allison Mack, she was also charged, and she pled guilty to charges related to her role in recruiting women into DOS and enforcing its practices. She was sentenced to 3 years in prison and began serving her sentence in 2021. But she has publicly...
So did she get out?
Yeah, she's out. Yeah.
Oh my God.
She has publicly expressed remorse for her involvement in NXIVM, but a lot of survivors just view her actions as unforgivable, and I really can't say I blame them.
Yeah.
And also, she ruined her life and she's probably never going to act again. So that's what you get for making women your slaves.
Yeah.
Claire Bronfman, she was arrested in 2018 on charges of racketeering, identity theft, and conspiracy to commit wire fraud. She pled guilty in 2020 and was sentenced to time served, 21 months in prison. Her financial backing played a key role in sustaining NXIVM's operations, and she remains a divisive figure due to her unwavering loyalty to Raniere. That was the other thing, is like, because of the people in power with this organization and all the money they had, they were able to do so much. And that's how, like, if you went into an organization or you were going to go to a seminar and you would see wealthy women there or celebrity, wouldn't you be like, oh, like this is legitimate? These
More
women
status.
are involved. Yeah.
I wonder if any of them are writing him in jail.
I feel like it probably attracted even more crazy people who are writing him, like, do better. But
I wonder where he's in prison, like what prison he is. I wonder if it's in New York.
I saw somewhere that it was like the charges were brought about in New York, and at one point he was in court in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
The initial charges, I think, took place in Albany.
So Albany was just like the headquarters, but they had like little satellite places too.
Yeah. Sarah Edmondson, at one point she was, I think, in charge of the Vancouver office. So yeah, they had offices that once as they were growing, they were popping up in different places.
Yeah.
So Sarah Bronfman, sister to Claire, she was not arrested or charged in the same way as her sister, but her financial contributions did help sustain NXIVM. She distanced herself from the group after its collapse and has remained largely out of the public eye, which, like, good on you, girl. Nancy Saltzman, our fearless/unfearless co-leader. She pled guilty to racketeering conspiracy charges and was sentenced to 42 months in prison in 2020. As co-founder and key figure in NXIVM, her role in the group's manipulative practices contributed to the suffering of so many women. She's now serving her sentence in federal prison. And again, like, there's video evidence of her, which I don't know how they got it, because it's of her talking about it like almost after the fact. And she cries about it. And she's like, this was my life. Like, my family's destroyed. He destroyed my family. She's like, I signed up to make the world a better place. I didn't sign up to be in a cult. Yeah. And she is quoted as saying, like, you're hearing all of the bad stories, but what about all of the good stories? Like, I think she was saying over 17,000 people experience good from what they created.
Okay, well, you made freaking slaves. Like,
yeah,
you don't just get to be like, well, we did good things too. So
yeah. And it's like how far it trickled down and how many people have not spoken up. Like, you don't really know, but I mean, it was
like, if someone murders someone and then there's like, but look at all the people I didn't murder. Come on, don't I get credit for that? What kind of dumbass statement is that? Fuck that girl. Fuck Nancy.
So our gross leader, I don't want to claim ownership to him. No thanks. Raniere was sentenced to 120 years in prison in 2020 after being convicted of sex trafficking, racketeering, and other charges. His conviction marked the end of his leadership of NXIVM, but his influence over followers does remain a dark part of his criminal legacy. The fall of NXIVM has sparked critical conversations about self-help and exploitation, which, like, I feel bad for all those people out there who really are sharing about self-help, because it's just put a stain on their whole life and livelihood. It's a call to remain vigilant, to question authority, to demand transparency. If there's one lesson to take from this story, it's this: Personal growth should never come at the cost of your autonomy, dignity, or safety. So today, while Keith Raniere sits in prison, he's stripped of his powers while his victims begin the long process of healing. The world continues to learn from NXIVM's downfall, and the legal scrutiny of similar organizations grows stronger. He has left scars behind by NXIVM as a stark reminder of the real human cost of manipulation, coercion, and unchecked power. And as we close, I just want to honor the survivors who did fight for justice and exposed all of the truth. Their courage has paved the way for a greater understanding of the dangers lurking behind closed doors and charismatic smiles. The NXIVM saga stands as a stark reminder that the pursuit of self-improvement should never come at the cost of humanity, proving that even in the darkest corners of exploitation, the courage to speak out can dismantle empires of deceit.
Ugh. What a scumbag, Keith Raniere.
And I feel like that doesn't even touch upon all of it, but it does touch upon a lot, and it's so gross and so sad.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to say that I wouldn't be susceptible to that, but yeah, I just feel like you can't ever, like, you can't say anything without, like, walking in other people's shoes and knowing their mindset at the time, you know?
Yeah. And
especially when I was younger, when I was 20.
way more susceptible.
Yeah. Although I really do feel like the second someone would be like, okay, well, you're a slave and we're branding you.
Yeah.
I don't know about that.
Literally scarring them. God, if you can Google the pictures, and it's so gross because they were told that, like, oh, it's going to be a tattoo of mountains and it's to show growth and empowerment.
So they didn't see it beforehand?
That was like the whole premise, is they were told and showed something that looked like a mountain, but it was literally a K and an R, and it was Keith Raniere, his initials. And this was what they were doing in DOS, the women's empowerment group.
Do you think our sorority is a cult-like?
I mean, yeah.
You do?
Yeah.
I mean,
we honestly didn't do anything where we were branded or had to, like, were exploited for sex. Thank God.
No,
but
no. Oh my God.
It was, I mean,
we should do
I would
an
do it
episode
again
on pledging.
Oh my God. I mean, there's
wild.
Definitely some Greek life out there that does
the very messed up
stuff.
We would hear about it. We would hear about it all the time. Even
our neighbor
pledging.
School at University of Buffalo definitely did some fucked up stuff.
Yeah. I mean, even other Greek life organizations that we knew, they did fucked up stuff.
Yeah.
But I don't feel like I have lasting, like, damage from pledging. Do you?
I mean, look at us. We made it out.
Yeah, I know.
A lot of our best friends are from our sorority and were hazed by us.
All of my best friends are from our sorority.
Yeah, exactly. I hazed you.
But
Can I say that? Can I say that out loud?
You tried to haze me.
It was too nice, right?
We'll
go with that.
You were so nice. You would try to be mean and I would be like, okay.
Can you imagine if you pledged before me and then you, like, the roles were reversed where you had,
do you think we would be friends?
I would have
hazed the shit out of you.
So mean to me. You'd have been like, this fucking loser. This girl I'm gonna walk all over.
But you know what really, like, was just a shocking thing to hear is that I remember one of my best friends from high school. He went to the Army and I went to college and I joined the sorority, and we, like, met up afterwards and we're hanging out after he got out of, like, basic training, and he was, like, way into the Army, and I was telling him stories of pledging and he was like, that literally sounds like basic training. Like, being like, they tear you down to build you back up, and then all of that kind of stuff, which that's what we used to say.
Yeah. I mean, I hope one of my other best friends who wasn't in the sorority listens to this, because she was always like, you paid for your friends. And I'm like, damn right. Because we had to pay dues and whatnot.
And it was a good investment because we're all still friends. So
yeah. And, like, well, unless you're Jen, who just didn't pay ever.
Yeah, fuck that. What kind of scheme did they think they were running here where they were going to make broke ass college? I was eating ramen noodles. I did not. They thought I was going to pay dues. Yeah, right.
Oh, so God, we're going to get some clapbacks. Oh, my dog just jumped into the picture. Sorry.
Okay, so you're actually very fuzzy on my screen, and I could not tell what was behind you, and I was about to be like, Lauren, something's in the house.
Keith Raniere. Oh, my God. No, it's just Cooper jumping on the bed.
I know we're going to be telling spooky stories at night, and usually we're filming at night, or we're recording, and I'm sitting next to my my sliding glass door with no curtains, and I don't have a lock on my door.
Don't tell people that.
Okay, I do have a makeshift lock, like a MacGyver
It's the wood
lock.
stick, right?
Yeah, that's just a broomstick.
That works. Those work. Don't.
We also have security cameras and alarms, so try me, bitch.
Yeah. And 18 creatures that live in your house. Or,
yeah, and a guard dog.
2 cats, 2 dogs.
Yeah, and we're Noah's Ark over here.
Yeah, Clooney's got you. Moose is like, come on in. Come on in,
Moose
guys.
Does not care. But I don't know, man.
That would be a good thing to cover is Greek life, because you hear stories of people who
we can interview people. Happens. But I don't feel, I truly don't. Do you feel like you have any psychological damage from pledging?
In the moment of being hazed and blindfolded, what? And doing certain shit, I was like, I will never recover from this. But
really?
It's
not funny, I guess, if you do.
It's what, 12? Oh my God, it's 14 years later.
Oh my God.
13 years later. And I'm like, shit, I'd do it again. I'd hate my fucking life, but I'd do it again.
The day that I crossed, I said I would do it again.
Yeah.
I was down as hell.
And there was times where I didn't know if that day would come. Because for those of you who don't know, which is probably everyone, I was Jen's pledge mom, which meant I needed to keep her in line. And this bitch would go rogue. She drove to a different city once, and I was like, you coming back?
Dumped. And if you're watching this, fuck you. I'm just
fuck you. Can I say his name? Fuck
no,
you, dude.
No,
okay, I won't say it. But seriously, he sucks.
Yeah. But
you came back.
That was more psychologically damaging. That was psychologically damaging.
This man's, we won't say his name, but he straight packed up his shit and left without saying a damn
Wait,
thing.
can I say one thing about pledging? One thing that we had to do. Okay, so I got dumped the night where we had something called potions. We should not be telling this. They're going to go take away the charter for our fucking chapter.
They don't haze anymore. Our chapter just is all about peace and butterflies. They don't do this shit anymore, so you can't go after them.
Yeah. They're all fine. But so I got dumped the night that we introduced something called potions, and the first one that you had to eat was it was just coffee grounds. Oh. And I do not drink caffeine, like ever, because it just
person.
What?
Well, because you're an insane person, but go on.
Oh, I know. But for some reason, my mom can't either. My mom can't have any caffeine. And I just I shake and I get so like jittery and anxious and like truly, truly miserable if I have like half a cup of coffee. Honestly, even less than that sometimes. Like right now, if I'm going to the gym and I really want to feel like really hyped up and crazy, I'll drink a cup of tea.
Woo!
just to feel a little extra something in life. But yeah, so we were being fed spoonfuls of just coffee grounds. And I remember.
No, go. Sorry.
And Mahaney, if you're watching this, you didn't come to this lineup, and I was alone, and all the other girls had their big sisters like feeding them water and stuff to like make it more palatable and like help them. I was fucking up shit's creek with no one helping me. And I remember I got back to my dorm that night and I was like just dying. Like I actually think that when it came time for me to be pledge mom, I was like, that's the one thing that we shouldn't do, because like what if
I had a panic attack when I was fed caffeine grounds, and I specifically said to them, do not feed these girls caffeine grounds, give them non-caffeinated grounds. And those fuckers didn't listen to me, and so I apologize.
Who bought it? Alpha Chi, probably.
You think
Shout out.
for sure. We all live. No, but straight up, I was like, do not give those girls caffeinated grounds. If you're going to feed them grounds, give them decaf. I was not listened to because I clearly, as we spoke, I was a softie with no authority. And so I apologize on behalf of that traumatizing experience, which I also
remember being
had.
in my dorm, getting out of the lineup, texting my boyfriend, getting dumped, and then just sitting in my dorm like
Being like, this is the worst day.
so caffeinated and just so miserable. And at that point too, you're already like not doing super well. Okay, I don't think we're making the argument that it's not a cult.
I was gonna say this is cult. I said cult.
Is this the realization? Is this it?
Is this your epiphany?
What's it called again? High control groups?
High control group. That was a high control group.
Yeah, it was.
Okay.
So does a high control group mean you're a cult? Or is it just like that's a risk or a warning sign?
I think it's essentially like let's evaluate if this is a high control group. Then it's like check. And then there's other factors.
Okay. Well,
we were slaves, essentially. And
we weren't slaves.
We were performing tasks.
You did have to perform tasks.
You had to perform tasks. There was a hierarchy.
There was a hierarchy. Oh my God.
So,
okay, they controlled what we wore. Your clothes.
At one point,
how weak?
We couldn't sleep.
Oh, yeah.
Isolation.
Social isolation.
Is this our epiphany? Oh my God. This goes viral. We're gonna go viral for the wrong reasons, and then all of our sisters from beyond are gonna contact us and be like, "Fuck you guys! You told our secrets." We're gonna get rehazed by the older sisters.
They're gonna bring back alumni weekend. That actually, alumni weekend was my only psychological trauma. I won't name names, but you know who I'm talking about.
You know who you are.
Oh my God.
Okay, well thank you for listening to
this is our episode.
We love you guys.
Therapy.
No one come after us. Bye.